Let me, at the very outset, apologize for this small little glitch that has occurred from my side. Uh, Sorry for the delay. I would like to begin by offering my warm greetings to all those who are present at today's opening session of the Conclave. Special thanks to Sri R.P. Sinha for his being with us and for his sharing some of the ideas, his experience over 32 years that he has been uh, at the service of the country, especially in dealing with safety, security, and loss prevention matters. I would also like to thank all those people who are on the head table for having given me this opportunity to be amongst you to share my experiences on a subject of national importance. As was mentioned during the introduction, which was sumptuous, bulk of my career was associated with security-related issues, security, intelligence, and how to utilize what intelligence we had to transform that into action. Some of that I will today would like to share with you on a subject again which is of national importance, and see how we can create synergy, firstly in the training issues and in knowledge, and then how we can combine these two for the greater benefit of the country. I had the privilege of attending the International Institute's Global Conclave in 2018 and was treated to some of the finest uh, subjects which were by members of the Cabinet, Union Council of Ministers, subject matter experts, practitioners, and other speakers. It was very enriching, and I came away with a lot of ideas, a majority of which we have tried to inculcate in our company and in our consultancy with others. I will try and walk you through several slides on this subject, and because it will give you a snapshot of what is intended to be shared and how we would like to go about it. At the outset, let me add that the theme of this conclave is very contemporary, given the uncertain global situation. What I mean here is that we have to contend with uncertainties, dangerous situation, not only within the country, but within our neighborhood and also elsewhere. The global situation is uncertain, so it creates a lot of opportunities for people like us to try and understand where we're headed and what are the steps that we need to take to mitigate problems and losses, and how do we overcome this in a fixed timeline or in bylines. The theme of the conclave, as I see it, brings to the fore newer threats and challenges that exist therein. In the last 2 years, we have seen how subjects like gray zone warfare, how subjects like information warfare, the use of social media for changing public opinion have all come to center stage. And I would believe that the private sector, the civil society, is not outside the pale of any of these. We are affected by them on a daily basis, and we need to understand how we react, how to overcome these challenges. As I would like to, in the succeeding slides, try and talk about a few other things. And I'm confident that the fellow speakers at this conclave, with their rich experience and expertise, will not only give us the benefit of their knowledge, hindsight, but also provide suggestions to overcome the challenges ahead. I will talk with emphasis on India, because that is my subject. And I would also like to add that whatever I say is also perhaps universally applicable. And these are things that we all need to understand. And not only people who are experts or professionals in safety, security, or law prevention matters. But I would like to focus on India's national security. Today, security in India is no longer understood in its narrow military terms. What I say is that apart from defending the frontiers of this country or the borders of this country, the armed forces of India have evolved. They are now perform a variety of other functions. At the same time, we have many more stakeholders on this platform than ever before. We have today think tanks, we have institutes of education, for example, the IITs, the IIMs, and others who are also looking at national security from their professional point of view. We have think tanks, more think tanks today than ever before, who create a value by way of bringing forth their own experience of a subject and also their linkages overseas that enables us to create knowledge and share this knowledge among those who require it and those who may have overlooked the requirement but would still like to come within its fold. The national security in India has remained the preserve of the central government. And the central government has the mandate to ensure that external security, the territorial integrity of the country remains its primary responsibilities. But as we have seen in the last several years, things like we have a large number of non-traditional security factors that were on the sidelines, which had not been given prominence in our scheme of things. For example, cybersecurity, information technology, information and communication technology, terrorism, water, climate, energy, environment, transportation, health, pharmaceutical education have gained greater importance and relevance. In the post-coronavirus period, we have found that some of these have even become so important that greater attention is now being paid to them. For example, when the Honorable Prime Minister of India declared that India has become the global pharmacy, now the focus is on India's pharmaceutical industry. Any harm that comes to this industry will create substantial issues of threats to us. So the pharmaceutical industry today is on the highest of priorities for the government to protect and to ensure that it remains vibrant in the service of the nation. The Prime Minister also has repeatedly looked at when he said that maritime security, cyber security, and international terrorism are now areas where he would like us to focus. It is not the focus only of the government. I think it's the focus of the industry as well, because we need to develop technology and tools that will give us the kind of domination over some of these subjects which the Honorable Prime Minister has listed. Maritime security, we find 80 to 90% of international commerce is on the seas. So we have to ensure that whatever we do on maritime security remains very, very paramount to our national security requirements. So these are all important subtext of the national security, and therefore anybody who is in the business of providing security should understand that we have moved on from what it was about 5-10 years ago, and we have now to understand the threats and challenges that lie ahead. And I think having said this, the Prime Minister has also accorded the highest priority to this sector, as also to the others. Today, one of the takeaways to coronavirus pandemic has been working from home or using webinars to talk to people. I think the kind of subject matters that have been discussed in these webinars has been fantastic. I can share with you in the year 2020, 3 think tanks organized a webinar entitled China, how to decipher China. And we had it over 4 months. We had about 90 speakers, all Indians, and about 150 to 200 participants. And the kind of information that was brought forth was fantastic. It was just unbelievable, the kind of information we have on this subject. We spoke about the Communist Party of China. We spoke about China's media landscape. We spoke about China in the maritime context, and we spoke about China's cybersecurity progress. It was, I think, those four webinars were of the very rare, and we had a fifth webinar. We spoke about China's role in international rare earth exploration and usages. So I think we also need to understand that what happens outside needs to be reflected very, very clearly and with clarity in our living. So, as I say, national security will come a proper if it is seen through narrow prism. We now have to increase the spectrum so that we include nearly everybody who contributes to this all of the community approach to national security. One of the most visionary documents that I have come across in my service was the Kargil Review Committee report of 2002. This was the first time in the history of independent India that an interministerial committee sat to look at India's national security management. It brought about several changes to our thinking, to the structure, and to the understanding of the subject, that some of the contents of its report are very, very valid today, and they have become the stepping stones for greater synergies in this particular area. What is relevant to us today when we talk about safety, security, and loss prevention or enablers for national development? There are two challenges India faces, and it also perhaps done universally elsewhere. First is our institutions of governance are based on sector-specific knowledge and management systems. And over the years, as we adopted ourselves in a post-independence period, moving away from colonial practices to what India requires, but experiences show that these systems are unable to collaborate in delivering multidisciplinary responses to national and international challenges. This cannot be independent variables. We have to have a salience across the spectrum for the best use of synergies and resources for national interests. So what we are talking is today that we need to end the silo system of governance, the silo system of administration, and that we cannot keep information from flowing to other users in the system. For example, what the IISSM is doing today is providing us the instruments or the system so that we can go across to several practitioners and come up with recommendations or solutions where we create a system where we share information, knowledge in the best possible way. India, like says, in India we need to understand that we have to have access to the best possible knowledge and to share this amongst everybody. It also applies to those in the government, the union government, the state governments, and then in the private sector. I think it's much more in the private sector that they need to share at least knowledge on safety and security and loss prevention matters. The other area which I have mentioned is that the coronavirus pandemic of 2019 has upended the existing management systems and exposed the fault lines in political governance in an unprecedented manner. Like I said, it also exposed the status quo that we enjoyed in administration or in national security management or in national private security management. All this had to undergo tremendous change. The manner in which the coronavirus took hold of this, the systems was so graphic and so drastic that it took us a while to come to terms with it, how to deal with it. It's only in 2021 that we were able to come to grips with it and to take the challenge head on. So therefore, the challenges that coronavirus brought to the fore have been mitigated to a substantial effect, and also that we are now been in a position to bring in more structures, more structures that are talking to each other to ensure that we move forward in an orderly and in the correct direction. When I talk about new normal, I am also looking at how the international order has been affected, how international geoeconomics has been affected, how international strategic developments begin to affect most of us. For example, the China-Taiwan standoff, or the developments in West Asia, and India's unstable neighborhood are a cause for concern. Today, for example, in India, the Atmanirbharta program or the policies of the government takes into account not only the government, but also the private sector. And both of them have to face this challenge to themselves from inimical elements who are operating within or outside the country. For example, how do you assess a particular situation? Because today you have a virtual explosion of information. How do you sift the grain from the chaff? How do you understand that this is the exact information that is so required? So I think we are now facing these challenges. The new normal has also given us the opportunity to think out of the box, come up with solutions that really matter. For example, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has resulted in newer forms of warfare and weaponization of information, news and supply chain as weapons of strategy. Today, I think governments across the world, private sector across the world is to try to look at what the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, how have we been affected? What are the kind of method that we need to employ to ensure that the information that we have or the follow-on from the conflict is not going to adversely affect us or our business or other strategies. As I say, that India is not immune or isolated from the effects of such developments. No country in the world is. I think all of us understand what are the threats and challenges that lie ahead. I have always been an advocate calling for the induction of technology into the private security industry or to the security management system itself. Induction of technology to this process is critical. There is no dearth of indigenous technology to meet our requirements. We need to understand what to look for and where to look for and how we can employ our own technology. Today, we find that the information technology and information communication technology is a matter of great debate in this country. How we have to tackle this and what are the methods that we need to tackle this is getting very, very important. Because information in our digital India requires to create more safety features, more safety nets to ensure that our systems of communication are safe and not susceptible to interventions from inimical parties. As I said, there is no dearth of indigenous technology to meet our requirements. We need to take them on board, ensure that they are in a position to move ahead to create a better process for induction into our systems. The days of mathematical deployment of manpower by the government to address variety of security needs to be reviewed. What I'm saying here is that it's my own belief that the governments must become less visible when they provide manpower of physical security to installations. Time has come for the private security industry to step up to the plate and to create systems where they can address the need to develop technologies for safeguarding or man guarding or create substantial watch and ward abilities. But the government needs to focus on essential areas of concern. For example, metros, airports. There are arguments that the government must take a step backward and allow for technology and the private sector to come in a big way. That has to be done in a very, very calculated manner to have the best possible effect. I have been part of the private security in India since my retirement in 2010. I have looked at this in a very, very different way. And I think that today, private sector needs to understand that it has to develop its own synergies to protect itself. Governments will be able to advise, governments will be able to give you the kind of solutions. But I think the private industry has to stand on its own feet, take responsibility for its actions. For example, you take the small and medium enterprises in India, they do 60 to 70% of India's exports come from SMEs. And these are industries that are from small to huge. And these industries need to be brought into our own scheme of things so that they are protected, they're advised how to keep themselves protected from the after effects of competition. So the private security industry in India has matured over the years. The time has now come for it to step up and take responsibilities in own areas. The Atmanirbhar program is equally relevant in this space. And today we find a lot number of industries are now are in coterminous with the government. And most of these industries may not have the same kind of security or safety measures to comply and to ensure that when they integrate with the government on research and other projects, they are also equally safe and they do not create space for friction or for confusion. I think the Atmanirbhar Bharat program also has to understand that when you bring in players into the government fold, I think we need to have a lot of laid down rules and guidelines so that we create a system which is very, very safe and secure. Like I said earlier, the government of India has, through many platforms, has been the major service provider in the field of security and safety. For example, you have the Central Industrial Security Force, which provides watch and ward duties at government assets, protects government industry and other government of India institutions, installations. And the state governments and the union territories, some of them have begun to set up their own industrial security forces. And while the scope for improvement in provision of these services remains, I think the private sector also needs to understand how it can learn from the government experience and create platforms for its own safety and security. For example, when you talk about security risk management or political risk management, the government has its own systems. It operates through the Ministry of Home Affairs, with a number of central police organizations, or in the Ministry of Finance, which is able to advise and guide. I think the private sector also needs to look at how it can fend for itself, make investments through R&D, through own technology, improve training. As Mr. Medikar said, training is a very important aspect in any industry. And we need to train people not only to understand the importance of safety and security in their organizations, but also senior managers and higher managements need to invest some time in their security training issues. As I say, that the area of safety and security products in India has increased exponentially. Today, you have airports. If you look at the Civil Aviation Ministry's ambitious plans to have airports in most parts of the country, I think you're looking at manpower and technology requirements. Mass transportation systems, for example, the metro. Now you have in Bangalore, you have the Karnataka government and the Indian Railways trying to set up a railway project that brings into force mass rapid transportation. Law enforcement intelligence agencies, I think they also require technology that is relevant to their use. Security industry, that I'm talking about yourself and myself. How do we bring the latest in this field? How do we look at integrating ourselves with what's happening in the outside world? in, say, in Australia or in South Africa, because we have seen the South African experience last year when there was so much of rioting in arson and a large number of shopping and other business interests were put to torch by people who wanted to take law into their own hands. So I think that we are now trying to look at a gamut of industries that require safety and security professionals who can guide them, help them to create a better working environment. Along with this, then we have critical areas, cybersecurity. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware, Cybersecurity Awareness Month is globally observed during October, and this has been going through since 2004. Each country is actually began in the USA. Each country has its own team, and this year's team in Bangalore was setting up a system called Cybersecurity Awareness is the first line in digital defense. And cybersecurity is going to be extremely important for India, not only now, but in the future as well, because you require trained manpower, you require systems, and we also require to move away from systems that I think are not compatible with our national security interests. Then you have homeland security, industrial security, fire and life safety. In the 2018 IISSM Conclave, the Honorable Mr. Prabhu, Suresh Prabhu spoke to us about the need for a larger number of fire and life safety experts. The rapidity at which urban India is growing, the number of people who can carry out inspections, people who can carry out solutions of new training has not been commensurate with the exponential growth in infrastructure. So we require more people in this. And I think the information he gave us was something that is relevant today itself. Then technology hubs, for example, the Indian Army has now opened its second technical hub in Bangalore. It is a interaction between the industry and the army, where Bangalore, by virtue of its huge potential, is being linked, being sought by the Indian Army for carrying out a large number of requirements where it can sourced locally. Then you have airport security, you have port security. In fact, port security does not actually mean watch and ward duties on the land side. We're talking of security on the sea side, for example, underwater domain awareness. What are we doing about it? This is something very, very important, and underwater domain awareness requires to be given its largest share in maritime security. That's one aspect. For example, on the West Coast or on the East Coast, we require to understand that major activities take place on these coasts. So we have major ports, minor ports, but the way security is constructed requires a lot of change. Then I mentioned about the pharmaceutical and medical industry. What is the major role that they play in our system today? I have a different take on threats and challenges. In addition to what I have brought out in my PPT, I would also like to talk about, when I talk about a threat also emanates in the form of ignorance of systems, ignorance of what is happening in your neighborhood or what's happening in a particular area which poses a threat to you. And that is very, very important to understand. If India today is looking at threats and challenges, then you need to look as to what's happening in your neighboring countries. For example, developments in China as the last week of November, or what is going to happen when India takes up the G20 presidency very soon. So threats and challenges are going to be something that we need to keep in mind. And what are the challenges? The challenges are that we need to have more security skills. We require more people trained in security. We require capacity. We require creation, skilling, reskilling, capacity building, and things like this. So I think these are the challenges that we need to address in a very, very focused manner. We have all spoken about create, and that I also underline the fact that we need to create awareness over national security across the spectrum. No institution should be at work without understanding what is India's national security, what are its interests and objectives. That should give it an idea as to in which direction it needs to protect itself. Paying lip sympathy to national security is going to be counterproductive. We have to walk the talk. We have to understand that something proactive has to be done. And this also has to be done with an institutional framework, each institution taking responsibility for its own safety and security. As I said, that technology must be used as a force multiplier. Unless we don't use technology to a large extent, we will continue to remain open to challenges. So one is to ensure that we have enough knowledge of technology that we require in the prosecution of work. The Honorable Mr. R.K. Sinha also mentioned about our ability to detect, deter, and defeat inimical action aimed at our critical infrastructure before they unfold on our side. So we had to create the ability to detect, to deter, and defeat enemy action in one sense, so that we have an idea as to what are the threats that come our way and what are the challenges that we need to meet. This is very, very important, and I think it should be the motto of every security practitioner, that he has the ability to detect, deter, and defeat. This need not be a physical manifestation of something that's going to happen, but it also can be done remotely. Your personnel can be subject to, attacks by your competition. It can cause subversion. They can security for assets, sabotage, and protection of information. Confidential data is very, very paramount. This can be done from within the organization, from outside the organization. And I could understand this when I did the course on security information practitioner course in IISSM. So I think I was equipped to deal with the situation, understanding some of the basics, threats, challenges, and how to overcome this. I think this is a must for cybersecurity experts, private investigators, and professional risk management. And I said there is a greater interaction between government agencies and private sector entities in this field for obvious reasons. There has to be a coming together of government agencies and private sector. I am not talking of industry associations. I'm not talking of other associations. I'm talking of, say, organizations like IISSM and others who have great abundant knowledge in this field. How do we come together, advise the government? How do we do some research and development so that we create better facilities for ourselves and for the country at large? Yesterday, I was at a webinar when we spoke about India's neighborhood first policy. A lot of questions were asked as to what is it that we are doing and how is it that we are not able to get the kind of results that we need. Somebody spoke about what happened in the post-Galwan period, where India-China bilateral trade exceeded $100 billion. Well, on the one side, you had the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of External Affairs, you had the Ministry of Home, all bundled together in taking action. But I think the action on the other side from the other ministries was not easily forthcoming. So we had to create facilities to ensure that opportunities that come out of this aspect, for example, people wanting to come out of China to invest in India or to invest, how do we proactively do that? How do we create substitutes? So I think we require in safety and security and loss prevention a whole of the country approach. It includes public-private partnerships, academia industry fusion, and synergy between national and international institutions. I can say that, in Bangalore, we have the Ramaya University of Advanced Sciences. We were able to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Army Training Command, where the military and academia will come together in doing training, in exchanging experiences because for the army and for the civil side, also create synergies where there's greater understanding of each other's abilities, each other's opportunities to do things. So, last but not the least, before I go, I would like to commend uh, to the conclave what Mr. Sinha said, that we need to look at it in a focused manner, and what Mr. Medekar said, we need to train. So I think we need to look at bringing together more stakeholders through webinars, seminars, workshops, and training sessions. This has to be an ongoing process. IISSM has been doing this regularly, and I have been privy to some of the activities undertakes. But we are trying to create more platforms in south of India, so that we are also trying to bring in more knowledge, better understanding of the situation, so that we can create a wholesome project for the whole of the country. I think I will end here. I would like to again thank IISSM for the opportunity, for having to enable me to share my experience and expertise on the subject. I wish the conclave all the best and great success. Thank you and Jai.